In this module, you'll learn how to analyze AI identity risks using Microsoft Defender XDR. Hi, I amCio Rodriguez. At the end of this module, you should be able to one, uh, discover AI agents, two, assess blast radius, and three, analyze attack paths. The first objective in this module, discover AI agents in Microsoft Defender XDR. So before we get into the Microsoft Defender portal and start looking at this, um, we are going to, just discover those agents. So we're going to see the agents that are in the environment, the integrations, to learn about um, how were those agents created, whether it was Copilot, Microsoft Foundry, or third-party agents like AWS Bedrock, Google Vertex, and others. So there is an inventory of agents that we can look at. So when we go to assets and AI agents, then we can see those agents, the name, the product name. But anyway, so we'll get to that in a minute. The inventory again, we'll see information about those agents, and we can also filter and prioritize based on the risk level of those agents, for example. And obviously, like anything in cybersecurity, you should focus on high risk agents first. I mean, those agents that are deemed to be more dangerous, right? So that's basically what we're going to do. But why don't we just go into the demo and show you how that's done. So let's get started. This is the Microsoft Defender portal. You can get here by going to security.microsoft.com directly, or if you are in the admin center, you can also get there from the admin center. But so here we are. There are many solutions, many components to Microsoft Defender XDR. And if this is the first time that you see this portal, it can look intimidating, especially if you're not a cybersecurity person, or if you have not been involved into some SOC analysts tasks. Uh, but this is not an overview of Microsoft Defender. We are specifically focused on identifying agents in this environment. And that is found here, what it says assets. So if I expand this and I click on AI agents, notice that it's divided into agents in general. Mostly these are SaaS agents and local agents, agents that may be installed directly on a computer, on a device. And at a glance, we get an insight into the total number of agents that are monitored. There are 358 over here. Agents at high risk level, and that's what we're talking about. If you want to prioritize, there's one agent that it has high risk, and we can see it right away. It's right here. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Nothing critical. It's high, but it's not critical. Uh, Basically meaning that whatever the agent is doing, it's not the end of the world. So here we see the name of the agent, the platform in which that agent was created. Normally, when you see other, it's because it could be a number of things, but third-party agents, for example, would be in this category, of course. Entra agent ID. So if the agent has an ID, you can see that here. Not all agents have an Entra ID, but for security and governance, you will want to, you should aspire to have every agent to have an Entra ID, because then it's a lot easier to manage and secure those type of agents. Agents that have been published, so the status is published, and if you have any recommendations, that would be here. Well, actually, the risk levels also. Publisher status again, filter, and again, so um, we can also filter by any of this. So if we want to see per platform, we can do that. We can do the risk level. So if I'm interested in just looking at the high risk agents, then I could just go ahead and, just to get the noise out of it, and I could do that as well. We can look at risk indicators. And when we're talking about risk indicators, it's basically, um, you know, whether the agents coordinate with other agents, if there is any data exfiltration exposure, if there is any high blast radius or privileged business systems access, and that kind of stuff. In terms of the recommendations, again, we can see the recommendations there, the publisher status, and we can add more filters if we wanted to. The model, the version, creation times, and all that kinds of stuff. And in terms of matter, we have GPT-5, GPT chat, and that kind of stuff. So a lot of stuff, whether the agent uses MCP servers, here we can see that. And this is the model context protocol. So if you're not familiar with this, but this is the way that agents can access resources like sensitive data in a company. It's a path to access knowledge and intelligence. And we can look at the discover tools. How many tools? Obviously, the more tools that an agent has, the more dangerous it is from the security perspective. The more useful to the business as well. So you need to strike a balance there. But so this is the agent inventory. And this agent is powered by Microsoft Agent 365, which is the control plane for agents where we can do manage and govern agent. And we haven't gotten there yet. There is a whole lesson just about Agent 365. So basically, we are looking at agents from the perspective of the SOC analyst, but we could look at agents from the perspective of an admin, an M365 admin, or we could look at agents in the persona of a data security and compliance engineer in Microsoft Purview. We could look at agents in the context of a Microsoft Entra admin, which is like an identity admin, and other places. So agents are very complex depending on how they are brought into the environment, depending on the tools that they have access to, and the like. And so we can look at agents from different perspectives. So as a matter of fact, in a video previous to this, we look at the agent identities in the context of an intra-admin administrator. So we looked at that. So if you haven't watched that video, I would recommend that you go to that and take a look at that. In this module, we're looking at the Agent 365 on the perspective of a SOC analyst, a cybersecurity engineer in Microsoft Defender. But we're going to be looking at those agents from others' perspective as well. If I open this agent, if I click on it, see a lot of information here, but let's just open the page to have more real estate than this. So in the overview, we see a description of the agent and some useful details, stuff related, published, the date, the model. We saw a little bit of that. The owner of the agent, and for governance purpose, every agent should have an owner. And so if anything happens and we need to know more about this agent, well, has an owner. So here we see the channels. The more channels an agent has, the easier it's for user to find them. So we see that this agent can be installed from either Microsoft Teams and from Microsoft 365 Copilot. So if you have, obviously, you need to have the proper license for that. Um, Here we see the risk level, which is high, and then we have some risk indicators, right? Um, Coordinator agent basically mean that agent orchestrates other agents, which increases the potential blast radius of compromise. Data exfiltration exposure, that means that the agent has access to tools that can read organizational data and tools that can send data outside the organization. Now, this combination creates a potential path for data exfiltration and increases the risk of unauthorized data exposure. And then we have, again, the agent it's published. And here we see the attack surface, so we got the agent, the ID, and then the owner. So that's basically not really that bad. Here we have identity and authentication information and agent's instructions. Okay, and then here on this side we get the snow recommendations. We get some of the tools that the agent can access. We see that one of the capability is to search SharePoint, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, and Office 365. You would say, okay, but what Microsoft Teams? Well, um, this is if this is an OBO agent that acts on behalf of the user, then the agent would have the permission of the user who's using the agent. So if you have access to, let's say, um, you know, uh, OneDrive, then you could do that. But at the same time, this agent can decide, like, hey, have access to this. You can give permissions to the agent to do certain stuff, and that's where this tools and MCP service. So this agent can access the work IQ, work IQ mail. So it has knowledge of the context of the company because of those capabilities. And then here we can also see a little bit more of that. So that's basically the. We could also click on hunt to go hunting about that agent, but we'll talk about that later on, and we could also go into look at this on a map. Um, if I click on this, this should give me a map that will hopefully show the relationship of these agents in the country, which is similar to what we saw. It's basically we saw on the attack path itself. So that's it's an introduction basically to the agent inventory. So let's leave that there and let's take a look at our next objective. The next objective is to assess the blast radius of agent identities. Here we examine permissions, knowledge sources, and blueprint configuration. The blast radius is basically the scope of sources, data, and actions that an agent identity can access or perform if compromised. We need to evaluate these three areas to understand potential impact and compromise, or rather prioritize remediations. In terms of permissions, the question is what can the agent identity access? Here we review Microsoft Graph and other API permissions granted to the agent service principal or managed identity. Example permissions include read that, mail that, read write that all, which would be high because what you're saying is that the agent has the capability of reading and writing to email. Anything that has the write permission or the full control permission is something that we need to manage carefully because it could cause a lot of damage. So those are the kind of things that we look over here. Um, so broad application permissions equals larger blast radius. That's the bottom line. So obviously, you should, whenever possible, use least privilege and the scope permissions just to the narrowest possible scope. Zero trust least privilege permission is really prevalent when it comes to this. Another important factor here is the knowledge sources. What data does the agent, what data can the agent access? That's the question you ask over here. And so we need to identify all grounding data, the data sources available to the agent for retrieval and reasoning. Some example focus are like what SharePoint is the agent able to access, right? And how sensitive is that data? Is the agent accessing HR databases or employee records? Is the agent accessing, project files or public documentation, which would be low severity in that case. In terms of the blueprint configuration, the question is what actions can the agent perform? So in this context, we need to review the agent's capabilities and actions defined in its blueprint or configuration. So if you, those of you who watched my previous video, we talk about the blueprint in the context of Microsoft Entra. So a blueprint is it's a template that it's used, to control what the agent can do. So basically to set boundaries for the agent. And that's what, some example capabilities are again, whether the agent can send emails internally or external. And if the agent can send email externally, obviously that's high risk. If it can execute code and plugins and run custom actions, that would be high. Can it create or modify records? Can it read data only? So all of those things should be considered, and that would create the overall risk score, right? um, the impact that the agent can have if it goes into either a rogue administrator or if the system is hacked and malicious actors get access to those agents. Can the agent access sensitive data? Uh, can a malicious user using that agent use data exfiltration? If it's an autonomous agent, an agent, now remember that in the previous video, we talked about the different kinds of agents in automation, and we talked about agents that act on behalf of the user. Basically, the agent has the permission that the user has, but there are this autonomous agent that work on its own. There's a lot of automation, and there are these kind of like a digital colleague agents that have their own identity, mailbox, team account, and they just work like a human. So those agents are really dangerous. If one of those agents is controlled by a malicious user, could it do privilege escalation or system modification or external communication? So those are the kind of things that we need to understand. So larger blast radius when there are broad permissions plus sensitive data access plus powerful action. So we need to prioritize agents with all three risk factors. The key points is that we need to reduce the blast radius and strengthen security. remove excessive permissions and use least privilege as scope whenever possible, restrict knowledge sources and limit the required sites and data, reduce agent actions, remove unnecessary capabilities, apply identity controls, conditional access, MFA, um, and all that kind of stuff. So just keep in mind that also a dormant or inactive agent with broad permissions is still at risk. So the life cycle of agents, if an agent is not used anymore, then you should remove it or disable it or do anything to that effect. So we saw a little bit of all that in the previous agents, and here we're looking more at that. Now, in a subsequent video, we're going to talk about, and I already mentioned this, but Microsoft has this Agent 365, which is the control for agents. And this is the place where actually controls everything. So right now we're looking at Agent 365 just from the view of a SOC analyst. But um, when we look at the Agent 365 module, we'll have a bigger picture how Microsoft will control access to agents and secure and govern agents. So with that, let's get into our demo and let's take a look at some of these things. So here we are again at the Microsoft Defender portal, security.microsoft.com. And we're going to go back into our assets links over here, and we're going to click on AI agents. And so going back into the agent that we are analyzing, I'm going to click on this, and we are going to expand it to go into the full page. And again, so looking at the risk factors, we already went through this, but those are the kind of things that you want to look at. Here we see the attack path, basically the what the agent can access, and it's not that a lot of stuff, but this is really important. So when we're talking about blast radio, what can the agent do? What are the capability? And so these tools are really important to analyze to see what the agent has access to. If you are fine with this, if this is what the agent is intended to do, fine. Now, keep in mind that um, agents may drift. Somebody may change these things and modify and create another version of this agent. So an agent that originally maybe it's not that dangerous could become dangerous. So this is something that we need to monitor. And again, so for now, the capabilities are not that bad, although because this agent can send email externally, this is an agent that you want to monitor, and maybe you want to have, you know, if this is what it's intended to do, then that's fine. So a couple of things we can do here. We could also look at, we could go hunt and, to go hunting for this agent. So if we click on this page, uh, we can, explore. So here we can basically we'll come to this query where that's the object ID, agent ID. And if we click on run here, we get to this page where we can have more information about this agent. There's some more visibility. A lot of this stuff, we already saw that. So I'm not going to go through stuff that we already saw, but I want to call the attention to the this things over here, and it's the connected agent. So this agent is connected to other agents, okay? And then, so this other agents, could also pose some risk. So this is really something that we also want to be aware of, okay? And so a lot more information, but these are the kind of things that you want to take a look at. And what is this? Says more rows. It's a lot more information. There is a lot, to look at. in terms of this agent. That's one aspect. The other thing is that we could also go into investigation and response, and we can go into incidents and alerts and then look at incidents to see if this agent has been involved in an incident. And here we see a couple of incidents, not necessarily related to that agent, but we can take a look at this. Actually, this is related to Claw, which is a local agent. So we can not just identify agents, but we can come over here and we could take a look at this incidents and see what's going on. So there's also some suspicious elevate access operations, and this is a critical asset. So if I click on this, then I have a lot more information here into what's going on. Now, we're not going to go, this is not um, we're going to go and investigate an attack and stuff like that. Remember that the main objective was to identify this object. But this is the time in which a SOC analyst we need to come in and investigate what's going on. And there is a lot to this. So again, we're not going to go to all these things, but you can look at the alerts, activities, assets involved, investigation, evidence in response, and all that kind of stuff. But we're not going to go there because the main point was to look at the agents from its identity. So, but all of this is part of that blast radius. It's basically what's the impact of this agent if it's in the wrong hands, or if it's given more permission than necessary. Okay, and with that, we'll stop on this objective. Those are the main things that you need. There's a lot more information here than what you need to pass the certification exam, but remember that I try to go beyond to just not just what you need on the certification exam, but what you need to also do your job as a SOC analyst, cybersecurity engineer, or just understand the whole cybersecurity and agent relationship. So let's get into our next and last objective. This last objective, it's about analyzing the attack path. And we kind of saw that already. We went through it. We look at the different sources and what the agent, the capabilities of the agent. But the whole point is that, so what would happen if this you know, agent identity was compromised, right? Well, first of all, remember that you can disable the identity. That's one of the first thing, and we talked about that in the previous videos, right? Uh, so the service principal, the managed identity, depending on the agent, it could be a service principal and managed identity. If it has broad permissions, then you want to look at those permissions and again, just look at suspicious activity within the Microsoft Defender if that's what you use. Follow the attack path, basically meaning the mailbox that the agent has access to, the SharePoint confidential sites that he has access to. Does he have access to databases, user profiles and directories, plugins or code execution? Does he have access to plugins? Cloud apps again. So in terms of unauthorized access, is looking at sensitive data. Now, we haven't gotten into sensitive data yet. So from the perspective of, we're going to get to another lesson or module where we're going to go into Microsoft Purview, which is the Microsoft Purview is a set of solutions for data security. And there we're going to see sensitivity data. So we can look at, from the perspective of Agent 365, if it's access sensitive data. So this is more of from a SOC analyst, but we're going to look at several more modules, and one of them is going to be looking at sensitivity data exposure and all that stuff. So here, if the agent has privilege escalation, all of these things can be detected by Defender XDR. Exfiltration of email, if the agent has access to send email outside the company, and whether the agent is security policy changes, making any changes, and that kind of stuff. Always remember to prioritize high value data, privilege operations, the shortest path to impact, right? What is when you look at the path analysis, what is the next thing that the agent could do, right? Does he have external communication, right? So some of the actions of the SOC analyst, again, review the permissions and identify any excessive access, restrict knowledge sources, so limit the unnecessary data and connections, remove risky actions, like, you may be able to disable dangerous plugins and capabilities. And again, we're going to look at some of these things when we get to Agent 365 as the control plane. And obviously, remediate highest impact paths first, focus on paths to critical resources and data. So that's the gist of this. And we saw more or less how you would do that. So now we could take hours and hours going into Defender and talking about all these things, but for the purpose of the certification exam and kind of like an introduction to Agent 365 from the perspective of the SOC analyst, this is more than enough. So um, we're going to leave this objective there. We are on this learning path, implement security for AI. We already covered the secure access for Microsoft Entra Agent Identity. That was one module. We also cover analyze AI identity risk using Microsoft Defender for XDR, which is what we just covered, the one that we just finished. The next video is going to be enable real-time protection for Copilot Studio agents. And then after that, the next lesson is going to be configure AI gateway security on Microsoft Foundry. Then we're going to configure and manage guardrails in Microsoft Foundry. We're also going to cover how to protect AI workloads with Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Enable Defender for AI services workload protection in Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So we're going to come to, this is the one that I was talking about, that is the control plane for agents. So manage agents using Microsoft Agent 365. So to me, this is one of the, for the users, probably going to be one of the most interesting modules. So just wait for that. And then finally, on this path is the identity AI risks using Microsoft Purview data security posture management. And this is all about data security using DSPM in Microsoft Purview. So a lot of modules in this learning path, right, of the implement security for AI. And again, this is the 7th learning path out of 12 learning paths. So for those of you, if this is the first time that you're watching, there are 12 learning paths, 12 courses, and those learning paths are divided into modules. And the videos that I'm making is one video per module. Basically, that's the whole point. So at the end of this course, we're going to have like about 61 or 62 videos of this, so that you understand the magnitude of this certification. This is not an easy certification. It covers a lot of material, but again, it's one of the hottest certification out there, especially for Microsoft technologies. If you are Azure security engineer, if you gonna get into Defender, data security, there are many paths that you could go from here with a certification like this. So again, as always, I hope that you continue to accompany me on this journey to certification for the SC-500. Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe, share, and like the channel if you find this useful. Thank you.